It's so great to have you on the show here today, Drew. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, which I don't know if a lot of people say that about insurance, but it is something that comes up a lot in our group. And I know there's going to be heaps of people listening that are going to take some great value from what it is you've got to share with us. So
James, it's great to be here. So ask all the hard questions you want, because now is the time to get some free good advice.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that you've got your own business story to share and you've got lots of experience in business yourself. But first off, just share with us, where are you right now? What business do you run? What does it look like to be Drew?
James, my business is called Sapience Financial and Investment Services. Now, the very first thing that happens when I say that, people say, what does sapience mean? Actually, sapience is a familiar word. We know it from the word Homo sapient. So it means wisdom from unusual places. So there's a little bit of a fun dig in there. So my business is called Sapience Financial and Investment Services. We've been doing this for some 20 years, and we work in the financial advice space, but we specialize in working with small business owners and their families.
Absolutely. And you've got a whole range of knowledge around insurance. And I specifically wanted to grab you on the call today because we've had quite a few questions come up in our support network, in our group for massage therapists around insurance.
Right.
Now, massage therapists, as part of their requirements of practice, they have a couple of kind of insurance already. You know, they need to have public liability, professional indemnity, that kind of stuff. So that's all handled, although we're open to advice on that too. But the main question that comes up is around income protection insurance and how to insure your income as a small business owner in an industry like massage that's often a bit up and down. Often when people start, they're not earning a lot anyway. And so I'd love to just pick your brains a little bit today around how income protection insurance specifically works. And so I guess if we can start the conversation with, how much does income protection actually work? If I'm a massage therapist and I've got a number of clients each week, and then I get some income protection insurance, can I be assured that it's actually going to work for me?
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, the first question I would have to ask is, how much income do you have? The second question is, how much do you want to insure? So initially, people might think that's a little bit silly, but it's not. So let's pause and work it through. Income protection insurance, and sometimes it's called sickness and accident. Why? Because they love confusing you. Income protection insurance can only insure up to 75% of your income. The reason for that is the insurance companies want to make sure that there's incentive to go back to work and earn the extra 25%.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's great.
So
how does someone prove how much they've earned? That's probably my next question.
And normally that's where the paperwork starts. So in practical terms, if you know you could insure up to 75% of your earned income, at some point you have to prove how much you earn. Now, you can either prove it when you take a policy out, and that's a really good idea, or you can prove it at the time when you're needing to make a claim. And that can be hard. So for example, if you've gone on a skiing holiday with a family, you've fallen off the chairlift and you broke your wrist and you're unable to work. If you haven't already proved your income to the insurance company at the time of the claim, you're going to have to do it. So I always say, start up front and say, insurance company, this is what my income is. Now you can do that through three ways. Number one, you can provide a computerized pay slip showing what your income is. But if you're in small business, it might not happen. Next thing is you can provide a tax assessment notice showing what your income was. Or if you're new to business and you're just starting out, you can provide a set of documents that shows what you've earned for the last 3 months, and then we can annualize it. So the gold standard is be able to prove your income with documents from the tax department. The not so gold standard is prove what you have worked on to date, and then when you've got it documented, then you'll come and increase the quality of the policy. The price for one or the other is the same, but it makes such a difference at claim time.
Okay, and what if you've got a difference between what you earn on your tax return and what your business actually turns over? So, for example, if you are renting somewhere, or maybe you've even got a staff member or two, I know they'll bring in some income as well, even if you're not working. But that just adds a whole heap of confusion to the whole thing.
Oh, it sure does. And that's where income protection for self-employed people is a bit of a minefield. So you really have to say, I'm prepared to do some learning and I'm prepared to do some talking with an advisor like myself. Now, I'm biased, so a handful of salt. But in practical terms, if you have an income stream that perhaps is, kind of hard to prove or might not be exactly what it could be, you're still going to have your overhead expenses. You might have the cost of the rent. You might have the cost of your products. You're definitely going to have advertising, your mobile phone. So sometimes there are fixed costs that all small businesses have. In fact, you've got to stay open for business. So
Yeah.
the idea is perhaps if income protection is not working for you, consider something associated, but it's called fixed business overheads insurance.
Right.
Sometimes it can go hand in glove with income protection. And sometimes you think, you know what, I just need to fix my overheads for 12 months. So if something terrible has happened, you still have a business you can sell and move on. But if you're falling off the ski lift and you need a good 6 to 8 weeks, at least the overheads are being um, reimbursed, I suppose. So an insurance company can actually give you 100% of your fixed overheads.
Right.
You've got to prove it. So at some point, you have to let me talk with your accountant and I say, hey, what are the fixed overheads for the last tax year? The accountant gives me that document and we're home and hosed. So think of income protection for you, the person, and your earned income, or fixed business overheads, which is really a great start. Put them together, you have 100% coverage. If you can't, it's a start.
That's fantastic. I didn't even realize those were two different things. So that's really useful even for me to realize that. Because I know a situation we have seen is where a therapist who was growing a business quite quickly, but was up to a place where they were running a nice little business themselves, but were still not taking much actual personal income for it. They were ploughing all that money that was coming in back into growth,
Me too,
picking out
absolutely.
their place, just growing literally. And then they had income protection insurance, but the income protection didn't pay out because when you looked on paper at her actual income, her inner
Yes.
pocket income, it was very little, very little at all, even though she had this quite good turnover and felt quite successful as a business owner. And I know that really hurt, like emotionally. It's like, oh, come on, I'm doing this. It's
Absolutely.
just like a bit of a smack. Nah, this is terrible.
And with those types of things, that's really a problem at the setting up of the policy. Back to the
Right.
question about do you prove the money now or do you prove it later? There's a bit of work to do. And maybe in that situation where someone's in high growth mode, where they plowing back more funds than they should into their business, maybe the fixed overheads would have been ideal. It may well be that the fixed overheads are the cost of the staff,
Hmm.
rental on the property, the lease on the vehicle. At least if you can have those things sorted, if something really bad happens, it buys you 12 months, sometimes 24 months window of opportunity to get it sorted.
Yeah, and that sounds really, really useful because I do. It's not something we necessarily recommend, but I know a lot of the industry does do that. When they first start up, they don't have a lot of backing quite often. They don't get business loans. They just bootstrap their way. So as they're going, they're
Absolutely.
building up what they need to. And great that they're that entrepreneurial. But I
Yeah,
know it definitely could feel like a kick in the guts after 12 months of working really hard and all that stuff.
I
If
would
something
be
happens,
devastated. And this is really an issue where you need to make sure that the income protection insurance you get is what's called personal insurance, not general insurance. Now, I'm going to get some hate mail after this, but let me get on my soapbox and help your people realize the two differences between personal insurance and general insurance. General insurance is normally insurance for things, for stuff, for cars, for overheads. It insures stuff. And normally, each year it has to be renewed. Personal insurance, I can call it professional insurance, but I'm biased. Personal insurance insures people and their things and what they do and what they earn. Sometimes personal insurance can take a bit longer to get, but that's because once you've got it, as long as you pay the premiums, they can't take it off you. It can't be cancelled. So beware, there's two flavors of insurance, the general for the stuff, but the personal for the professional. That's the area that we all need to be thinking about and learning a little bit more about.
That's really interesting. Again, I didn't really know a lot of this stuff.
And
This is
no one
enlightening.
tells
I'm loving
us
this
this.
conversation.
And this is why it's really important. How do we let people go into business where they look after the customer, they look after their commercial liabilities, but they forget themselves? And when the wheels fall off, not if, but when, and we've all had a blown tire at the most inopportune time, then we think, oh, I wish I had learned a little bit more about this earlier on. The frustration I feel for people so bad, because that was also how I started my journey into what I'm doing now.
Ah, that sounds interesting. So share a little bit about that. You've obviously got a bit of a history in business. You're running something great now, but how did that start?
I started my journey in the legal profession, and at some period of time, you could say my fast growing career was overtaken by a faster growing tumour. And as a result, I lost my ability to speak, and I'm making up for it now, for 2 years.
Wow.
And as a result, I lost my career, I lost my contract, and my employer said, this looks like it could be a very scary thing if something doesn't go right. And I lost my income. In fact, more than that, I lost just about everything else except my mortgage. This was the time of home fund mortgage when the mortgage rates were 18%. And I
Wow.
started my life with a full head of hair. And as you see now, it's receding. And I think in part it's because I lost my income during a very expensive time. So I did not have income protection insurance. I didn't even have an accountant I could have sued for not telling me about needing income protection insurance. No one told me, and I wasn't to know any other way. So I lost my legal career. I was off and out and sick for 2 years, very sick. And I realized I had to make some changes. I needed to apply a business mindset, and I needed to start protecting and providing for my family and for my future. And it was a long haul and it was a hard row. So I understand what it's like to lose your income, to lose your health, and just about everything else. And for that reason, I am passionate, but more than that, I am so obsessed with helping people know what their options are, what their opportunities are, and how to make the best. And sometimes we run out of cash, we run out of puff, we run out of what have you, but there's always something we can do. And at some point, when life gets better, we cycle back in, we can do even more. But I started and I lost big time.
Wow, I love that story. I mean, what
And
I
I
love,
hate that because I left it.
what I love of it is that it's a massive challenge. Losing your health like that,
Yeah.
especially when you're in a high performance career, that's devastating. And I guess what I love about it is the way you've been able to turn that around and actually gain some motivation from it to start a new career, to be doing something new that's kind of helping people through the same, or potentially working through the risk of that
That's
same
right.
thing happening, which is a great way to have that passion behind what you're doing. And I'm sure that's led to a fair bit of the drive and motivation you've had over the years since to be able to grow the business to where it is.
It's all part of it. But the challenge is my business is selling a product that hopefully people will never have to use.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, that is a really interesting conversation. A lot of insurance sales is probably about risk and about fear and mitigating fear and risk. How do you go about helping people to know that they need insurance without just like being scare tactics all the time? Is that
Yeah.
something you have to deal with?
Absolutely. Look, I take the point that I'm too old not to talk about what's important and what matters most. I know what it's like to lose so much. So, for that, at some point, your compassion for people and your love for their business and what they're doing in the world has to overcome your own limitations. And at some point, we have to say, I'm about building capacity, not about building comfort.
Yeah,
And that's a
I love that.
difficult thing, but at some point, as we talk with our family and they wonder, why do you do such long hours? Why do you do work at prices that perhaps is not commercially sustainable for the period of time? It's because we're building. We're building something for the longer term, and that's really how we have to look. So when I'm talking with my small business owners and their families, because there's always a family behind a small business, it's about stopping the dominoes from falling. It's like having a family trust to secure assets. It's like having a will. It's like having a power of attorney. All those things there are about stopping the dominoes falling so that your business continues regardless and your family continues regardless. Do you want to know a really scary uh, fact that I wrestle with every day?
I'd love to. Yeah.
31 families every day lose their primary income earning parent. They pass away
Wow.
unexpectedly through accident or sickness. That's 31 families tonight who will go to sleep minus a parent and minus an income stream. And tomorrow there's another 31, and then there's a 31 after that. And my challenge is I work with the people in every 31st client is the risk that I try to wrap a net of safety around because there's a family behind that. And there's lots of things that we don't talk about because we either feel icky or because we haven't really thought about it, or because we're in small business and just so flat out doing what we're doing and getting the BAS done and everything else. Don't get me started on the BAS statements. But at some point, I think when you get a little bit older, you wonder why you do what you do for how long you do it. And then you see the grandkids or you see the teenagers or you hear the grunting of the teenagers and you realize, yeah, that's the reason why I do. And I
Yeah.
think at some point, our businesses will only grow to the extent of our personal growth with ourselves. Our clients feel it. They hear it from us. They understand what we talk about because so much of what we do with people is about connecting with people. And that's real life, and that's real conversations. And that's the road I've chosen to go down.
Wow. I love that. And it's something where I can hear the heart you've got for those people that you're working with.
Absolutely.
And I love that statement that you use. It's like these are not necessarily comfortable conversations or
Yeah,
comfortable things to think about, but it's almost like the care and attention you have for that person and the family overrides that discomfort. And so you've got to be able to go, well, someone's got to have this hard conversation with them. If it
we
is
have
going
to
to
have the
is
conversation.
going to be solved, if it's going to be something we can work through,
It,
someone's
it's
got to
it's
have
as practical as talking to your teenager about sex. You might not like the conversation, but if you don't have it, you're going to have consequences crawling around the floor, and it ain't going to be cheap. So at some point, it's about building capacity, not building the comfort.
Yeah, I love that. I also love, I can hear that you've got a real heart for the people that you work with, which is great. I also know that it's not everyone's experience of financial advisors to have that kind of experience. You maybe are representing the best financial advisors that are out there, but I'm sure the whole industry, like any industry, doesn't have everyone in it doing the same thing. And we've had the Royal Commission recently. I know there's been a huge tighten up around restrictions and rules with financial advisors. And I guess coming back to the point you were making earlier, a lot of mere mortals like ourselves or our listeners might need some advice. I know what you're giving us today is very general. it's not official advice. It's got to be something that we do want to tailor advice to individual people, in that financial advice is like that. So how can someone know that they're talking with a financial advisor that's actually going to give them the right advice around things like insurance?
That's a good point, and I'm biased, so a handful of salt with what I say, but I would start my conversation with this. Understand that there are people who are employed financial advisors, and then there are small business financial advisors. I'm down the road of the small business financial advisor. I'm in small business. I understand small business, and I love small business, and I see the purpose and the passion and the change that small business makes in the world, sometimes often better than that which the lumbering corporates will actually follow. So I think at the first point I would look at is, are you speaking with an employee or are you speaking with the owner? The next thing is, are you speaking with someone who has what's called an open product list? So here's a trick. In my world, there's some 15 different insurance companies, but some advisors only work with 2 or 3. So when they're talking with you, they're talking about 2 or 3. When I'm talking with my clients, I'm talking about 15. The amount of data and information is quite different. So let's make it personal. If I was talking with a massage therapist today and they went to advisor number 1, the employee, they could only get income protection for 2 years. But if they're talking with me, who has 15 different companies behind them, I can get them income protection till age 65. The difference is staggering. So, first of all, employee or self-employed. Second, a small product list or the open product list. And then the
Yeah.
third point is, talk with them. Hasten slowly. Don't rush into things. And if you get the fear of dread or the fear of something or other, push the pause button. Because these decisions, once made, are the ones that become the fabric of your small business, and they wrap the protection around your family. And you got to get them right. And I think there's a lot to be said for intuition. Obviously, the advisor has to be licensed. Google them. Google Drew Browne, DREWBROWNE. See where I am. See where I turn up. See if I'm committed to educating the public about how they can have better advice. So think about those types of things and start your conversations there.
That's good advice. What if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, oh, Drew sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Can they get in touch with you? Do you work nationally?
Absolutely. The beauty about being in 20 years in the business is this. We work with rural Australians Australia-wide. We work with, what's the nice way to put it? Shift workers. Oh my gosh, I have shift workers who call me at 3 a.m. They have to make a booking first because that's when they have dinner. So a lot of my work with small business owners is actually fitting in to their life, to their business hours, not eating in to their key income producing time. People don't have to come to my office. In fact, the last person who did got a parking ticket and that didn't go down very well. So hence we understand that small business is actually online business. So you get the full service and I'm happy to come and see you face to face. But if you're in the Pilbara, if you're in Tasmania, or if you're like my clients in the forces who every 2 years go to a different part of Australia, it's okay. We're either there or we're online.
Great. And you say we. Do you have a team?
Oh, absolutely. I have a research team. I have outsourced compliance team. I have lots of levers, you could say, that I can draw upon that either keep an eye on what I'm doing or they will help increase my insight in a particular area, or they'll just provide the back office services and support that I need. So like making a movie, sometimes you'll go and get a whole heap of people. You create the cast, you do the work, you make the movie, and everyone goes back until the next movie's made. It's a lot like that when you're working with remote professionals like myself online.
Yeah, I love that. And so you've obviously built up a business in an area that is quite technical. You've got to have a high level of knowledge around what you do to give that level of service that you've got for your clients. I was wondering, like that must have taken a bit of time. It must have been a bit of a journey for you to build the business to where it is now.
Ever.
What would you say was the most challenging moment you have had in business so far?
The most challenging moment in business?
Yeah, or the most challenging thing you've had to overcome to get your business to where it is right now?
I think overcoming sadness and expectation.
Wow, that's interesting. Tell me more.
So, sadness that I would like to think that all of my industry really wants to think about protecting and providing. I would really like to think that so many of the insurance companies are purely focused on the end result for the customer. And I'd really like to think that uh, lawyers and compliance officers really want to put the interest of the clients and their best interests first. When you've worked in my industry for the time you have, I get to meet people and see things at a very different level. And sometimes what I see is not what makes me happy. And dealing with how do I continue to bring my full self to work, my best self, my insights, my business acumen, regardless of that. And I think sometimes it's about saying, in my world, in my reach, for my clients, there is safety, there is care, there is insight, and there is learning. For me, it has to be about helping people becoming better versions of who they are. In my business, we talk about helping people become better protectors or providers. It's a very human trait, but it's the thing that really aligns us together to protect and to protect our family, to provide through our business. So that's what I've drawn upon as an ability to pull me through when I see the sadnesses in more corporatized parts of the world, and when I see things that don't have to be, because that's another 31 people that were never reached by my brand, and tomorrow there's another 31 people who sadly haven't yet been reached by my brand. So for me, it's about keep your family, keep your clients, keep your business close and safe, because life doesn't always work out the way we would expect.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I can hear too, it's almost like you're working from the inside to change the actual industry itself as well by setting an example, working through the way you know things should be worked through. And that's been, as you mentioned earlier, part of that is a personal growth journey, not just business skills, but actually being able to overcome those challenges internally is part of what leads to business success and industry success.
And I think that's what it is. I was very fortunate in 2017 to be recognised by the Westpac Businesses of Tomorrow Awards, and that was because of a specialty niche insurance business that we started. That's ostensibly just for people with very hard to insure occupations or complex health situations. And we did that because we found so many people, good business owners, didn't get the chance or didn't get the time because of the cost constraints or the legal constraints of my industry. And they were left. And that wasn't right. So we created a new model. And we've been looking after those people in those particular ways. And one of our challenges is, how do you advertise a confidential service? And sometimes those are the things that we have to deal with. But it has to be a personal growth journey. Anything else doesn't get you out of bed and doesn't encourage you to get the bass returns done where you really should be out having a barbecue with your mates. But don't get me started about the bass returns.
I love that. I love the motivation that's there. What would you say is next for you on your journey? Where do you see your business going in the future?
Ooh, that's a good point. My business is going down the road of creating online courses and learnings for small business people and their families that they can access in their time and their ways, with training videos, with insights, of course a book, but skills that actually bolt into their intranet, into their business systems. Because at some point, we all get tired of having to reinvent just another wheel and put yet another wheel or another technology into our systems. I'm fortunate. What I work with are key risks for all families, all businesses. So once you get your head around the key stuff, life becomes better. And in a strange way, I think people become better. One of the things that we say is that secure people live bigger lives. And I've yet to find a small business owner who wakes up and thinks, today I'm going to be average. No, 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 no. That's not what we do. It's all about living the bigger life and not leaving our families behind.
Yeah, I love that. And I certainly agree. It takes a fair amount of courage to step into small business ownership, especially if you're doing it from a place of actually having a big goal and wanting to make a big achievement. And I guess what I see is a whole lot of people who do that have the courage. They're very forward motivated, and they tend to not think too much about the risks, or maybe they think and plan, but insurance might not be something that is naturally going to be something that they'll consider.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you being able to share some of the advice you've shared with us today, some of the education around insurance and some of your story. If people listening are interested in getting in touch with you, where would we go to look for that?
James, 3 things they can do. Number 1, go to my website, Sapience, Sapience, sapience.com.au. Go have a look at what we do, look at our philosophy, look at our systems. The second thing is go to our blog. There is a lot of information there, and it's all handcrafted by our team to be relevant to what our customers are doing. And then the third step is make sure you get our occasional newsletter. We call it not a newsletter because it's not something that you don't read. It's something that you browse through and you think, that thing is good for me, or that one's for my friend, or this, not this month, maybe next month. It covers everything that helps people either protect or provide. So 3 things, sapience.com.au, see us there. Number 2, go look at our blogs. And number 3, get our newsletter. And if you're social, of course, we're on Facebook at Sapience Financial, one word. Let us know what you're thinking and what you need to talk about. And we'll actually have in the show notes down below a checklist for massage therapists and other body workers on some of the things they should think about when they're looking at either business overheads insurance or income protection insurance, and a link to some of our fun explainer videos where you can learn some stuff and have a giggle along the way as well.
That sounds fantastic. So we'll put all of that in the show notes, whether you want to visit Drew's website or download the checklist specifically for massage therapists. Thank you so much for putting that together. That's really, really great. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Thanks for demystifying a bit of insurance and sharing some great stories and your amazing heart-fit clients as you go. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
James, thank you for letting me share some of the good news about financial services. And to all your people in your community, may they stay safe, may they learn some more stuff, and may they become secure and lead bigger lives.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. That was really, really cool.